Hey guys, tonight we dive into a Christmas story that feels more like a cold winter storm than a cozy holiday fire. You're standing just outside the front door, the cold air nipping at your nose, while inside your parents make a decision that will change everything, banning you from Christmas. It's like being written out of the family's greatest celebration, as if you're invisible on the most important day of the year. You probably won't survive this without feeling every sting of loneliness and disbelief, but stick with me. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's awake for this one. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You remember the smell of pine and cinnamon wafting through the house every Christmas Eve, the warmth of the fireplace flickering against the walls, the laughter bouncing off the ceiling. But this year, the laughter is gone. Instead, you feel the cold weight of being left out, banned, uninvited. You can almost hear the creak of old wooden floors as your parents shut the door on you, the sound echoing like a final goodbye. It's hard to imagine what led to this moment, but as the cold wind brushes past, you recall the arguments, the silent treatments, the long months of distance growing between you and the people who once made the season magical. Did you know Christmas wasn't always celebrated on December 25th? The Romans originally celebrated Saturnalia in mid-December, a festival of lights and gifts, much like our modern traditions. And here you are, locked out of what should be the brightest night of the year. Historians still argue whether these winter festivals were about hope or control. Maybe your family's coldness tonight feels like a bit of both. You trudge back from the porch, the crunch of frost under your boots loud in the silent street. Inside, the house feels like a museum, perfectly preserved but empty of warmth for you. You're banned from the Christmas feast, the presents, the familiar carols that once wrapped you in comfort, like a soft blanket. It's surreal how quickly traditions can turn into punishments. You think back to the day your parents told you about the ban. Their faces were unreadable, almost rehearsed. You asked why, what you had done to deserve exclusion from a holiday meant to bring families together. The answer was a silence so loud it drowned out everything else. It's strange how the people closest to us can sometimes become the most distant. You find yourself wandering to the old attic, where relics of past Christmases lie buried under dust and cobwebs, faded ornaments, tangled strings of lights, and a cracked nativity set missing a shepherd. That nativity always reminded you of those old Roman Saturnalia festivals, where gift-giving was part of a ritual to bring good fortune. You wonder if your family sees this Christmas as a ritual or a burden. Historians still argue whether the true meaning of Christmas has been lost over time, drowned out by commercialism, or rediscovered in acts of kindness. Tonight, though, the debate feels far away, replaced by a personal coldness that feels like frostbite on the heart. And just when you think this night couldn't get colder, you receive a call that shifts the whole landscape. It's your brother's voice, shaky, asking for a favor that will turn this story on its head. You answer the phone, still clutching the cracked nativity figure, and hear your brother's hesitant voice. He's out of work, out of options, and, ironically, out of Christmas plans. The same parents who shut you out are now begging you to help him find a job. The irony stings sharper than the winter wind slipping through the cracked window pane. You recall that Christmas hasn't always been this fractured for your family. Once, it was a symbol of unity, a time when the warmth of the fireplace matched the warmth in their eyes. The tradition of gift-giving traces back to the three wise men, historians say, but over time it morphed into more of an obligation than a celebration, something your family now seems to treat as a ledger of debts and favors rather than love. Quirky little fact: did you know that in Victorian England, Christmas was almost reinvented by Charles Dickens? His story, A Christmas Carol, changed the holiday from a wild, drunken festival into a time of charity and goodwill. Maybe your parents missed that memo. As you contemplate your brother's plea, you think about the ongoing debate among scholars about whether family loyalty should be unconditional or if boundaries are necessary for survival. Tonight, your own boundaries feel fragile but necessary. With a deep breath, you make a decision, one that will redefine what Christmas means to you this year and, possibly, change your family's story forever. You sit at the kitchen table, the faded holiday decorations casting soft shadows in the low light. the phone still warm in your hand after the call. Memories of better Christmases swirl around you like the scent of cinnamon and pine, yet the sting of rejection lingers like a bitter aftertaste. You remember how the tradition of Christmas trees began. Did you know it was Martin Luther who first decorated a fir tree with candles, trying to mimic the starlit sky? That kind of hopeful symbolism feels almost cruel now. Your brother's request to help him find a job feels like a test, a delicate balancing act between resentment and compassion. The tension between what you owe family and what they owe you is a debate as old as time. Historians still argue whether kinship is a matter of biology or choice. You wonder if your parents ever wrestle with this question, or if they simply make decisions to protect their own comfort. You pour yourself a cup of lukewarm tea, the steam mingling with a draft sneaking through the cracked window. Your mind drifts to the quirky fact you recently read. In Japan, Christmas is less about religion and more about couples' romantic dinners and fried chicken dinners. A fun twist on a global tradition. It makes you smile despite yourself. Tonight, you start plotting how to turn this unexpected plea into something more than just a transactional favor. After all, what's family if not a complicated story that we rewrite in quiet moments like these? You wake the next morning to a sky smeared with soft pinks and grays, the kind of dawn that seems to hold a promise but doesn't quite deliver. Your phone buzzes with a message from your brother, a hesitant, "Can we talk?" like a small flag of truce. You remember that, historically, messages in bottles were the earliest form of long-distance communication, tossed into rivers or seas with hope, much like this fragile attempt at connection. Historians still argue whether such primitive messages were truly effective or just desperate gambits. You decide to meet him at a quiet cafe, the smell of fresh coffee swirling with the murmur of early risers. He arrives looking uncertain, carrying the weight of unspoken apologies. The conversation begins awkwardly, like trying to tune a radio through static. You recall the quirky tidbit about how pigeons were once used to deliver messages across war zones, a symbol of trust and loyalty now replaced by fleeting texts. As you listen, you realize the complexity of family dynamics, the kind that scholars debate endlessly. Is loyalty unconditional or earned? Your brother's words are hesitant, revealing a struggle between guilt and hope. You sip your coffee, letting the warmth seep into your bones while your mind races with plans to navigate this delicate path ahead. The days that follow feel like walking through a fog, each step uncertain but necessary. You start organizing your thoughts and finances, knowing that whatever happens next will require clear decisions. It reminds you of the ancient Silk Road, routes connecting distant lands through twists and turns, much like your path with your family now. Historians still argue whether the Silk Road was more about trade or cultural exchange, but for you, it symbolizes the journey ahead, complex and unpredictable. One evening, you find an old photo album buried in a dusty corner. The pictures show younger versions of your family, smiling and hopeful. There's a quirky detail, a forgotten Polaroid camera once cherished, now obsolete like some of your memories. You trace your finger over the faded faces, feeling both nostalgia and a quiet resolve. The phone rings unexpectedly, breaking the silence. It's your parents, their voices tinged with hesitation. You can almost hear the invisible tension that has stretched between you all, like a thread pulled too tight. The academic debate comes to mind again. Is forgiveness a choice or a necessity? You aren't sure yet, but you feel the first stirrings of possibility. Outside, the night sky is vast and indifferent, studded with stars that have witnessed countless family dramas. You breathe deeply, letting the calm settle, ready for whatever comes next. You wake to a morning that feels strangely lighter, as if the weight of unspoken words has lifted slightly overnight. The coffee brews quietly, filling the kitchen with a familiar warmth, but your mind drifts to the conversation with your parents, their tentative request, the unspoken hopes behind it. It's like hearing about the first telegraph messages sent in the 1830s, small, hesitant signals that changed communication forever. Historians still argue whether it was invention or necessity that truly propelled the telegraph, much like your situation teeters between resentment and reconciliation. A peculiar detail sticks with you, the old family clock ticking unevenly, as if out of sync with time itself. It reminds you of the quirky history of time zones, how before standardized time, towns kept their own clocks, making schedules a chaotic puzzle. Your family's timing has felt just as erratic lately. You decide to reach out, sending a careful message to your brother. It's the first step, slow but deliberate, like laying the groundwork for a fragile bridge. The scholarly debate about whether families can truly change or just adapt echoes quietly in your thoughts. The day unfolds with cautious hope, the light outside shifting gently as if nature itself is urging patience and understanding. You find yourself scrolling through old photos, each one a frozen moment of laughter and chaos, reminding you how families can be like patchwork quilts, stitched together from mismatched pieces. The invention of photography in the 19th century revolutionized how we preserve memories. Yet even with all these captured moments, some emotions remain blurry, undefined. Historians still argue whether photographs show us reality or just what we want to remember. A quirky fact crosses your mind. Did you know that the earliest selfie was taken in 1839 by Robert Cornelius? He had to stay still for minutes to capture his own image. A slow, deliberate process, nothing like today's instant snaps. Funny how patience was once forced upon us by technology, not the other way around. Your phone buzzes, a message from your brother. It's short, almost hesitant, but it opens a door. You type back carefully, the words flowing more easily than expected, like a river breaking through a dam. You wonder if your parents are watching this small truce unfold, their pride tangled with relief and uncertainty. The debate lingers. Are we bound by blood, or by the choices we make? The answer feels as complex as ever. Outside, the evening sky blushes softly, inviting you to breathe out the tension and lean into what might come next. The next morning, the house feels quieter than usual, like it's holding its breath. You sip your coffee slowly, tasting the bitterness mingled with a hint of something hopeful. This moment feels like a turning point, the kind of quiet before the storm, or maybe before the calm after it. The idea of new beginnings dates back centuries. The ancient Romans celebrated Janus, the god of transitions, whose two faces looked simultaneously forward and back. Historians still argue whether Janus's symbolism truly shaped Roman culture, or if it's just a modern interpretation. On a lighter note, you recall reading about a bizarre tradition where Vikings would toast to new journeys by jumping into freezing water. Talk about commitment. You chuckle softly, imagining yourself diving into an icy river just to prove a point. Your phone buzzes again. This time, it's your parents. Their message is simple, almost fragile. Can we talk? The words hang in the air, weighted with years of unspoken feelings and missed chances. You feel the warmth of the morning sun on your skin, and let it remind you that even the coldest winters give way to spring. You text back a cautious yes, aware that whatever comes next, it's part of a story still being written. Outside, a bird calls softly, as if urging you to listen carefully to the quiet moments. They often hold the most truth. You meet your parents in the garden, where the late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the grass. The scent of blooming jasmine drifts around you, mixing with the faint sound of distant church bells, a reminder that some traditions never quite fade. The history of family dynamics is as old as civilization itself. Scholars still debate whether family loyalty or individual freedom was prioritized in early societies. One quirky fact you remember: in medieval Europe, some families had intricate family trees carved into wooden panels to display their lineage, a sort of ancient Instagram, if you will. Your parents' faces are softer now, their earlier rigidity replaced with hesitant warmth. They speak about mistakes, regrets, and the stubborn pride that kept walls standing where bridges might have been built. You find yourself reflecting on how, even in the most fractured families, love sneaks in through cracks like ivy on stone. A sudden breeze stirs the leaves, and you notice a tiny snail making its slow way across a fallen leaf. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always have to be swift. It just needs persistence. As you listen, you think about how stories like this one echo through time, reminding us that reconciliation is both art and science, still studied and never perfected. You take a deep breath and realize that whatever happens next, you've taken the first step toward healing. The garden feels less like neutral ground and more like a place where new chapters quietly begin. The days following your garden meeting feel like walking through a fog that slowly begins to lift. You find yourself replaying conversations in your head, like an old movie with new subtitles. Family dinners return to your calendar, though the air is still tinged with caution. Historians still argue whether family bonds are shaped more by shared DNA or by the rituals and memories we create together. You recall a quirky tidbit about the ancient Romans. They celebrated a festival called Parentalia to honor deceased ancestors by visiting their tombs and sharing stories. It makes you wonder if honoring the past could help heal the present. You decide to invite your parents for a simple meal, hoping the familiarity of food will soothe the lingering tension. As you prepare the table, you notice the worn edges of the china, gifts from your grandmother, passed down like silent witnesses to countless family gatherings. The smell of roasted herbs and garlic fills the kitchen, mingling with the faint hum of your favorite old records playing softly in the background. You catch yourself smiling despite the uncertainty, because hope, after all, is stubborn. You also think about how technology has changed communication, how once letters took weeks, now a message can either build a bridge or burn it down in seconds. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness speak louder than the loudest arguments. As your parents arrive, you realize this dinner isn't just about food. It's about rebuilding a table where everyone has a place, even if the seats feel a little wobbly at first. You notice the subtle shifts during dinner, the way your father clears his throat before speaking, your mother's hesitant smiles, like they're testing the waters of old familiarity. It reminds you that even the strongest trees bend in the wind sometimes. Historians still argue whether forgiveness is a personal choice or a social necessity ingrained over centuries. You recall a quirky tidbit about the ancient Japanese practice of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer, embracing flaws as part of the object's history. It feels like a perfect metaphor for your family, broken but beautiful when pieced together thoughtfully. Your brother, usually quiet during these meals, finally shares a memory from childhood, an embarrassing moment involving a failed science project and a homemade volcano that unexpectedly exploded. The room fills with laughter, fragile but genuine. You realize that humor might be the glue holding this patchwork family together. Later, you reflect on how families adapt and change, just like cities evolve over time, absorbing layers of history and culture. You wonder how much of your current conflict will be remembered as a passing storm or a defining chapter. The answer feels uncertain, but that uncertainty holds a kind of quiet promise. As the evening winds down, you quietly acknowledge that the journey to rebuild trust isn't a straight path. It's more like a meandering river, sometimes slow, sometimes rushing, but always moving forward. The morning sun streams softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow that seems to whisper of new beginnings. You sit alone, savoring a quiet cup of coffee, the bitterness grounding you in this moment. You remember that in ancient Rome, mornings were a time for reflection and planning, a ritual that shaped empires. Historians still debate how much daily routines influence the rise and fall of great civilizations. A quirky fact drifts into your mind. Honey never spoils, and archaeologists have found pots of it in ancient Egyptian tombs, still edible after thousands of years. It strikes you as a sweet reminder that some things, like family bonds, can endure beyond time if nurtured right. You think about the conversation from last night, how your parents' guarded apologies mingled with hope. You feel the first flicker of possibility, fragile but undeniable. Your brother's reluctant smile lingers, a small crack in the old walls. Outside, the birds chirp in irregular rhythms, like jazz musicians improvising, a perfect metaphor for your family's imperfect harmony. You wonder if, like those melodies, your story will find its own beat, one that feels authentic and true. You make a quiet vow to keep trying, to embrace the messy, beautiful process of healing. Because even when bridges seem burned, embers remain, waiting for the right moment to spark again. You wander through the quiet house, memories swirling like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. It's strange how a single moment can rewrite the entire script of your life, like when the first printing press revolutionized communication, changing the world overnight. Historians still argue whether Gutenberg's invention or the earlier movable type in East Asia had a greater impact. Your thoughts drift to an odd tidbit. Octopuses have 3 hearts, and 2 of them stop beating when they swim. You smile at the irony. Sometimes, moving forward requires parts of us to pause or even stop, just to survive the journey. You replay the look in your parents' eyes when they called you after months of silence, their voices tentative but filled with something like hope. You remember your brother's quiet gratitude, a fragile peace forming in the cracks. It feels like standing on a shore where the tide is slowly returning, washing away the footprints of past pain. The scent of cinnamon and pine from the holiday wreath you refuse to take down fills the air, grounding you. You realize that families, like forests, grow in cycles, sometimes shedding leaves, sometimes blooming anew. As evening falls, you sit by the window, watching the stars blink awake. You wonder if this chapter closes, or just pauses, waiting for the next page to be written. The silence in your house feels different now, not empty, but full of possibility. It's like when the first electric streetlights lit up cities, changing nights from darkness to sparkling opportunity. Historians still argue whether urbanization or electrification had the deeper effect on society's pace. You think about a quirky fact. Wombat poop is cube-shaped, which helps mark territory without rolling away. Somehow, that odd little detail feels like a metaphor, how we all try to leave our mark, neat and unmistakable, even when life's messy. Your phone buzzes softly. An unexpected message from your parents, simple and honest, asking how you're really doing. It's a small bridge, but enough to start crossing the divide. You smile, feeling the warmth of reconciliation stir like embers after a long winter. You stretch out, the gentle hum of the fan mingling with distant sounds outside, the world moving quietly, steadily onward. You realize that life's hardest stories often begin with a fracture, but don't have to end in ruins. With a deep breath, you close your eyes, letting the night's calm wrap around you like a soft blanket. The past lingers like a shadow, but your future is waiting just beyond the dawn.